What's up, Block fam? Welcome to today's episode where we are going over the new Harley-Davidson Nightster, one of the new offerings from Harley-Davidson in their Sportster lineup. This bike is a smaller displacement version of their new Revolution Max engine, 975cc liquid-cooled, dual overhead cam, variable valve timing, hydraulic lashing for the valves. Significant changes to this engine as per Harley-Davidson's previous engines, and there's a lot of characteristics of this bike that are also brand new. So we're going to be going on a test ride today. We've got a lot of other vloggers here with us as well. We're going to be putting over 100 miles on it, and I'm going to be giving you guys my feedback, thoughts on the bike, on how it feels in terms of power, handling, ergonomics, all that stuff during the ride. And we're going to give you some detailed statistics as well. Now, before we get too far into the video, if you guys could do me a favor and hit the subscribe button if you enjoy motorcycle content like this. I'll be sure to hit that subscribe, hit the bell icon also so it sends you notifications of future uploads and activity. Let's go ahead, roll that intro, and we'll get into that beautiful B-roll footage. All right, so let's get some shots of people sitting on the bike. Over here we have Stacy Welt from Ride to Food. How tall are you?
5'4" with a 30-inch MC.
How do you feel on the bike?
It's very comfortable. Obviously very flat-footed.
Flat-footed?
I mean, it feels just like a Sportster.
Yeah.
Stock Sportster, yeah, it's great.
And then both feet up, you don't feel cramped?
No, not at all. You know, I could see maybe on a long ride with this exact setup, but if you were to put different bars on it for like a touring aspect or setup, right? It'd be so comfortable. I can sit on this all day.
All right, guys, we got a law-abiding biker here, Ryan.
Interestingly enough, dude, I have to choke up a little bit on this bike at 5'8".
Yeah?
Yep, because my arms aren't long enough, so yeah.
So that's funny because it's like you think it's a Sportster, so it's a little smaller, but you actually have to...
Yep,
wow.
I can't sit back like that. Even at 5'8", I'm going to have to choke up a little bit.
Okay, how do your feet feel when up?
Good, good, as long as I'm choked up.
Yeah.
It feels good.
And nice and flat footed, they got some bend in the knee.
Yep.
All right, guys, so we got Matt Laidlaw here.
What's up, guys?
From Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson.
That's right, excited to ride the new Nightster.
For those of you that don't know, he's 6'6", so this is what he looks like on this
motorcycle. What a
motorcycle.
grasshopper looks like on the bike.
Yeah. Is it really difficult for you to flat foot this?
You know, on a good day I can flat foot all the way. Yeah.
He barely has to put his foot down. So that's what 6'6" looks like on a Nightster. All right, guys, we are departing the hotel on the start of the ride for the new Harley-Davidson Nightster. So you guys saw Ergonomics, all the people sitting on it, and surprisingly, I thought I was going to be cramped or feel cramped on this bike, but I really don't feel cramped at all. So me being 5'10", pretty average height, this is where my knees are sitting. You guys saw when people were sitting on it. Obviously, if you're really tall, you know, like 6'6", like Matt Laidlaw, you might feel a little cramped on it, but me being 5'10", feels it actually feels pretty comfortable. I feel like I'm sitting upright. I do feel like I'm leaning forward into the bars a bit, just on some of these like bumps in the road here regarding suspension. The suspension feels pretty decent. It's not too stiff. It does have the emulsion shocks on the rear, which are adjustable. On the front, it has Showa suspension, which is dual bending valve Showa suspension. So I think they said emulates inverted or like cartridge, if I recall correctly. Obviously, we're going to get more into some technical stuff in the twisties once we get up into the mountains there, and we'll be able to feel a little bit more of how the bike handles, throwing it into turns and stuff. But right off the bat, I can tell you where the center of gravity is on this motorcycle. It's really low. So you've got basically the weight of the engine, the transmission, right, which sits really low on the bike, and then usually something that sits a bit higher is like the weight of the battery, right, and the weight of the gas, right? So liquid weighs a good amount, especially like if it's in a tank up here and it's sloshing around. But with the gas tank being under the seats, this isn't actually the tank, it's a cover for an air box, right? So cover it. Draft bomb. The center of gravity on this thing feels incredibly low. Flat footing it, no problem coming to a stop. If you guys don't know, the ability to flat foot a motorcycle whenever coming to a stop and low speed maneuvering usually instills a good bit of confidence, and confidence makes you a better rider. They are saying that this motorcycle is aimed at more of like an entry-level rider, and one of the things that they said, since it does have the multiple ride modes, with the power that it comes with in regular road mode and sport mode, I forget what they said the horsepower and torque numbers were, but I'll post them on the screen right here. But they were basically saying how that can seem like a bit much for a new rider. Like that can get away from you, especially on this motorcycle with the Revolution Max engine in it. You know, I was getting on it earlier in just regular road mode, pulled back on throttle, and man, it's like once a valve timing hits, whew, this thing starts taking off. But for beginner riders that are basically wanting to get this motorcycle, you can put it in rain mode, right? So you just basically press the mode button here, right, and it changes from S to rain to road. And then you have to let off on throttle. So if it's in rain mode, I let off on throttle. Boom, it changes over, it stops blinking. Good to go, rain mode. And it like just really hyper tames the throttle. See, like as you guys can see, it just really like, you know, adds like a lot of buffer, or not buffeting, but like a buffer to it. So it's not just like immediate on off. And so in like a rain situation, you don't want any quick, sudden movements in terms of like power, right? Because that causes you to lose traction. So with rain mode, it really slows it down a lot. Not slows it down a lot, but it delivers the power like so differently to where it's not like jerky. Like it's just so much different in rain mode. I mean, like look at this. It'll still respond, but it takes a little bit. So I changed my mode over to road mode. Watch, like much more immediate. And then sport mode, it's even more. So I'll go ahead and switch it over to sport mode. So when we get off this stop sign, take off. Yeah, see, just so much more responsive in sport mode. Alright, so while we wait for the rest of the crew to catch up, go over controls real quick. You've got high beam, low beam, pass light here. So pass is like press like that. High beam to keep it on, you press up like that. You've got option menu, which changes the stuff in here, which we'll go over. Horn, and then indicators below that. On the right side, you've got your on-off switch, which is circular switch. So basically on-off here, and then the start button is in the center. So you press that once, and it starts up. You've got some switches here, so you've got basically your traction control, which you can turn off. I do believe they said you have to be stopped. And then you've got your mode selection below that, and then hazards on the left side button above that. This bike is quick, very peppy. So in the display here, in the gauge, you've got your miles per hour going around. You've got a fuel level at the top of the display there, and then you've got S, which means I'm in sport mode. If I press the mode button, it does change over to rain, road, and then back to sport. You do have a gear indicator on the right as well. And then below that, you've got remaining, it says 177. So R means like the remaining distance that you have till empty. And then if I press the mode button, it changes over to the clock. And then we've got RPMs, which I'll probably leave it on. You've got kilometers, which would be your odometer. Change that over to miles. And then you've got trip one, which we'll go ahead and reset. Rev it out. It's crazy if this thing has a red line of what, like 95? Like it feels like aesthetically like a normal sporty, but red line of much higher than a normal Evo engine or a air-cooled engine, since this is liquid-cooled. Alright, so we reset A just so we get an idea of the distance we traveled today, and let's go back to RPM. See, like in this stuff where we're not like too technical, like whenever I'm on throttle, it's kind of on-off in sport mode. Like whenever you are back into throttle, oh man, the handling on this bike feels great. That bump was a little much for the suspension, a little rough. But yeah, the handling, like the ability to like just flick it into a lean feels awesome. Yeah, like I was saying with sport mode, it's more aggressive in your responsiveness for the throttle. And so like for stuff like if we're just kind of going around town, you know, and it's like I'm on off, it is a very on-off feeling, and so it doesn't feel like it's very smooth power delivery. You're gonna be using that if it's like you're riding more aggressive, right? And so like currently we're not riding too aggressively, so I'm just gonna go ahead and throw it into a road mode. So boom, we've got a road mode, let it reset, there we go. And that's like just a little bit of a smoother, more predictable power delivery. Not to say sport mode isn't a predictable power delivery, it is, it's just way more sudden. I'm really surprised at the ergonomics of this motorcycle. Like I was expecting to feel way cramped up just based on looking at the bike and looking at the size of it, especially with mid controls. I'm one of those people that traditionally like forward controls a bit more, or like slightly forward mids. To have straight up mids, usually I'm not a huge fan of that. Now it does make you feel like you have way more like control of the bike, especially for the fact that you can like stand up on it whenever your inputs with your weight and shifting and balancing the bike, you've got the inputs of your feet, right? So whenever you are going into the leans and the turns and stuff like that, it's like you've got, like right here, I'm not pushing with my hands, I'm just pushing with my feet. See? So like you've got that input with feet. So yeah, whenever you are riding a little bit more spiritedly, you do feel like a little bit more in control. Also, since you're able to distribute your weight below you, you know, you can set up, like if you're going over railroad tracks or if there's a pretty gnarly bump coming up, you can use those mid controls to basically like lift up and not have your butt on your seat, just in case you do hit a pretty gnarly bump and you don't want it going into your back. Like, you know, if you were to come across a bump like that. I really hope nobody ever comes across a bump like that. That's not a bump, that's a ravine. That's the Grand Canyon right there. So how they do have the seating, your right leg is basically over one of the heads. You guys can see that right here. There is a little guard there to kind of prevent you from your leg touching, but honestly, I can't feel any heat coming off of it at all. The fact that the bike is liquid cooled definitely helps the temps a lot. I really wish there was the ability to like see the temperature. That's usually something that like metric bikes, sport bikes, stuff like that, they have the ability for you to view the coolant temp. I mean, that's, I was gonna say that's cool, you know, no pun intended. But yeah, it's neat to be able to like keep an eye on those vitals of your bike, if you will, to be able to see oil temp, coolant temp. Some bikes have the option of being able to see ambient temp as well. Currently, ambient temp is in the mid 60s right now. So today's ride in Santa Barbara, California is feeling absolutely beautiful. It's kind of interesting, like whenever we are riding, a lot of the times, like with my personal bikes, my two main personal bikes would be my 2020 Softail Lowrider S, aka Goldzilla. For those of you that don't know, Lowrider S that I have, we currently have built up with a 131 cubic inch Milwaukee 8, pushing 151 horsepower and 150 torque out of that. So whenever you're on it and you're wanting to like kind of hug the bike a bit, you know, you tuck your legs in, you squeeze your legs to be able to get some like leverage on the tank. And then my other bike, the MT-09, same kind of thing. It's got like little tank grippers here, and so like one of the things whenever you're riding a motorcycle, it's like you kind of use your legs to bring in your knees in and the insides of your legs to like grip the bike for like handling and stuff. It makes a huge difference, especially whenever you're aggressively braking. But whenever I'm bringing my knees together on this one, man, the bike just feels so skinny. But I mean, your legs pretty much fit right into there, and it's not touching any hot parts, so that's good. Braking feels good, man. The fact that like, you know, this is considered entry level and you're like talking about Brembos on this thing, it's pretty awesome. The leaning feels really good on it too. I'm telling you, the center of gravity on this bike is so low. So fun fact also, they dropped 80 pounds off the previous iteration of the Sportster as compared to this bike. So this bike is 80 pounds lighter than the last Harley-Davidson Sportster. How crazy is that? That's significant. And then additionally, the fact that the weight is like now like a much lower, it makes it feel just really, really nice in terms of handling. I forget what lane angle is, but I'll be sure to post it up on the screen right here. Feels good though. I mean, I haven't scraped yet, trying to. Woo. So it's funny because the pegs are actually pretty short. So my boot scraped just then, but the peg didn't. My boots do like kind of hang off, even if I'm like kind of tucked in on both pegs with my feet. That's kind of interesting because that's what I heard, I think Picasso said. Feels good. Feels real good. I'm pretty surprised, to be honest. Holy shit. Oh, this bike is quick. For a 975, you would think, okay, lower CC, especially compared to like the 1250s that they've released for the Pan America and the Sportster S, you would think 975 would be slower, but damn, it's fast. Like once that valve timing kicks in, you can feel it. I'm sure you can hear it too. I will say one, and this is an easy fix, but a criticism of just jumping on the bike. The angle of the shifter peg and the brake feels a little bit low, but that could also be because I'm used to like them feeling a little higher with my feet using slightly forward mids or forwards. So whenever you basically like have your foot out more like that, like the position of those controls is going to change. And so with like straight up mids, setting my foot on the shifter peg is pretty much like my foot is flat, whereas I would prefer the shifter peg to be up a little bit so that I can like kind of get my foot under it and then like, I don't know, bend my ankles back. I'm sure I would get used to it pretty quick. That's really not like a large criticism. Rev matching on this thing feels pretty good. Also, for those of you that don't know, with the new Sporties, I can't remember if they did it with the Pan America. I think they might have, but they actually went down to smaller grips. Harley-Davidson is traditionally known for having 1-inch bars and, you know, larger grips, but these are actually smaller. They definitely feel more like metric, like 3/4. It feels like you have to pull back less in order to get, you know, the same amount of power. It'd be great to hear this thing with like a uncorked exhaust, something aftermarket. Oh, speaking of exhaust, I know that is one of those things that like a lot of people had criticism behind, saying like, oh, it looks like a leaf blower. For those of you that don't know, OEM manufacturers such as Harley-Davidson, they have to be within like a certain requirement for emissions as well as decibels for the EPA and DOT. I don't know how much DOT factors into that, but I know like EPA for sure. Obviously there's only so much that they can do in terms of like designing a stock exhaust. And like, let's be real, whoever keeps the stock exhaust on any motorcycle out there, it's one of the first things that people change. That's why there's such a massive aftermarket for them. Just overlooking the whole like design of the exhaust, that would be the first thing that is going to be changed regardless. One of the things about the Nightster that they really want people to do is to use it as an instrument of expression. The marketing things that they did behind Nightster is sending it out to all these custom builders and whatnot and having them customize it. The fact that this isn't a gas tank, right, it's a cover, actually gives people a lot of freedom in terms of customizability, because it's like you can change it, make it whatever you want in terms of like unibody piece if you want to make it a tracker. I don't know if you guys saw Speed Merchants, but like custom seat, the one bike builder over in Japan, Togashi, like he made like just all one piece from here to the tail, which was pretty crazy and like super cool. The fact that like that is something that's possible now, because you don't have to worry about, you know, this being a gas tank anymore. I know with the name Nightster, a lot of people were expecting like a lot of what the Nightster was, which is like a lot of blacked out, and so I think for this one they do offer black. Oh, another thing I did forget to mention whenever I was talking about kind of the bars, the cockpit if you will, comes with mirrors on the bar ends on both sides, which I am a huge fan of, because whenever the bars come out of the perch here and over, usually what happens is, for me, I've got wider shoulders. I'm usually looking at my shoulders or my arms, and I have to do what they call the mirror lean, so basically like lean back like that in order to see. Yo, braking feels nice, guys. Just had to get on brakes a little bit right there. But with this one, man, I can see behind me like incredibly well. There's like 8 other motorcycles back there, so I adjust this one a little bit too. There we go. Perfect. All right, guys, we're sitting at 47.6 miles right now, and getting off the bike, I didn't feel cramped at first, but as we got closer to that 50-mile mark, yeah, my legs, ooh, I'm feeling it in the hammies. All right, how are y'all feeling after riding about 50 miles?
I wish the brake pedal was bigger.
You wish your brake pedal was bigger and your back hurts. Law-abiding biker, how do you feel after about 50 miles?
Dude, it's fun.
Yeah?
It's fun.
It's fast, right?
It's a revvy little bike, fast. It feels like a toy, dude. At 481 pounds, it feels like riding a freaking toy.
Yeah.
But super fun. Yeah, they're in there.
6'6" Matt Laidlaw, how do you feel after riding about 50 miles?
It can definitely tell that it doesn't have the power that the 1250 does. That being said, it's still a really, really fast bike. I mean, it's way faster than the 983 is.
Oh, yeah.
You can't even compare the two, really. But I mean, the handling is super predictable and honest, just the way you'd expect. Yeah, the ergonomics aren't terrible. I mean, obviously I'm way too tall for the bike, but even with that being said, like the ergonomics, I feel like we're pretty good.
What'd you think after about 50 miles on it so far?
Dude, I love it.
Yeah?
I love it. I think it's super fun. I honestly like this bike more than the Sportster S. Even the suspension, it's a big upgrade. It's a big
Dude, yeah, 3 inches of travel? Yeah. All right, guys, we are leaving out of here. Kickstands up. Apparently the roads are clear, so we shouldn't have to watch for too much gravels and stuffs. Also, just want to give a big shout out to Matt for the gloves. Appreciate you, sir. These are great gloves. Harley-Davidson too. All right. Woo! All right, so on the next leg. Thus far, really enjoying the motorcycle. Did feel a little cramped up. I was starting to feel it in my legs a little bit just because my legs aren't used to being in that position. But otherwise, incredibly happy with it thus far. Really predictable in terms of power. Really nice brake feel. Ergonomics are good. Handling feels really nice. Hopefully on this next little leg, we get a couple nice twisties. We're able to speed it up a bit. All right, guys, so I'm going to focus on riding the bike, getting to know it a little better. One of the things I am noticing that I'm doing is I feel like I'm hanging in the gears a little bit long. One, for the fact that it's a stock exhaust and I can't hear it too well, but it also doesn't feel like it's, you know, lugging or anything like that. I need to put it back over to RPM so I can see what my RPMs are at. So, man, this bike, it just really likes being in those higher RPMs, which is so weird, so uncharacteristic for a Harley-Davidson, right? I know, like, most people aren't used to hanging those RPMs until like past 55, 6,000. Hell, even with my bike, you know, my 131 Stage 4 Softail Goldzilla, like, we got that thing set at like 7,000, and it's weird hanging it to 7,000, but man, this one, 9,500 RPM, crazy. Anyways, we'll get to the top of this mountain and show you guys whatever that view looks like. Leaving the photo spot here, headed back down to Santa Barbara. All right, guys, so let me go ahead and wrap my thoughts up on the Harley-Davidson Nightster 2022. So I think one of the big things I keep coming back to is the center of gravity on this thing, especially when you're throwing it into a curve and getting your lean on. The center of gravity on this bike is just amazing, which makes it handle very, very well. You've got a lot of confidence going into the turns. The lean angle is really good. The little warning things on the bottoms of the pegs of this bike have been ground down, so I've actually been scraping my boot for the most part instead of scraping peg, which is awesome, man. Like, really, the lean angle on this thing is just, I'm impressed. You know, of course, that is relative. Obviously, I'm talking about, I'm leaning pretty good for a cruiser, for a motorcycle that is considered a Sportster. This is just an insane motorcycle. The Sportster has just really become a contender in the market for performance. I think it's super cool because I think it was overdue. Now, this is considered entry level as to what they're saying. So somebody that is basically looking to get into the Harley line, the Harley family, they want a Revolution Max and they want a Sportster. The Nightster's more traditionally styled. And with 90 horsepower, it might seem overwhelming. It can definitely get away from you, but you do have rain mode to kind of like tame it down a bit, swap the mode over to road and then sport, and gradually like ease your way into it. Super cool and awesome. One, a Sportster has modes, and two, also a 6-speed transmission. So that's been something that people have asked for from the Harley-Davidson Sportster for a long time. 6 speeds. We've gone over 100 miles, so I'm setting at 112.2 right now. So we've put some pretty decent mileage on the bikes today. Honestly, my biggest criticism, because I do usually like to offer a criticism in these videos, because, you know, no bike out there is perfect, but I would say my biggest criticism of this bike isn't even a big criticism, but it's probably the ergonomics, which are still surprising to me. The seat has felt great. I recently did a review and the seat was actually too soft, and a lot of times you find seats that are too firm, but like, I have had zero complaints about the seat on this thing the entire time. It's like the perfect firmness for me, in my opinion. Now, the cool thing is, since it is a flat seat, you can kind of like adjust a little bit, so you can scoot back a little if you want, you can scoot forward. The bars, they do cause you to lean forward a bit, which isn't complaint from me. If you guys don't know, I'm actually a fan of like lower bars, drag bars. I mean, for a bike that's, you know, more local, obviously it's not going to be the best and most comfortable thing for like long distance. The suspension on the bike feels incredibly nice. Like the 3 inches of travel in the back is definitely noticeable in comparison to a normal Sportster, like say the 883 or the 1200, the Iron, the 48, whatever. It is a noticeable upgrade in suspension. The power delivery is awesome with the Revolution Max, despite it being a 975cc. I think this is the first introduction of the smaller Revolution Max, which we all know that they had planned, especially back whenever they were talking about releasing the Bronx. I think the Bronx was supposed to have like what, a 950 or 975cc, so we knew that they were going to do like different iterations of it. With the Nightster, this is the first time that we're seeing a smaller version. However, the fact that this bike is 80 pounds lighter than the previous Sportster, the fact that it is smaller cc's, honestly, it doesn't feel like it's much slower than the larger one. I mean, I know it probably would be, but just like the seat of the pants dyno, man, this bike is quick. Yeah, look at that, ridiculous. And you can tell when like the valve timing kicks in, because it's just, it turns on, it's like hitting boost or something. Pretty awesome. So yeah, the performance of the Revolution Max is great, the suspension is great, ergonomics, that was probably one of my biggest points of feedback with the mids. After a long while, you do end up kind of feeling it. For me, being 5'10", I do end up kind of feeling it like in my legs. But it's one of those things, it's like I'm not used to the positioning, and so I know if I were to ride it, you know, my muscles would get used to that positioning and it probably wouldn't hurt. Man, it's kind of crazy being able to come out here in the California countryside, in the California mountains, over by Santa Barbara, and to put this bike to the test like I have been. It's been pretty incredible, and I think it's a really good testament to like the quality of a product that the motor company is coming out with in terms of performance. Like, you know, Brad Richards, the VP of design, said they have to remind people that they are the motor company, they are not the motorcycle company, which is kind of funny to think. Like, their first focus is obviously the motor, what he refers to as the crown jewel of the motorcycle, and so they want that to be obviously like to look great, to perform great. And so I think they've done a really good job with the Nightster. I'm honestly like really eager to see what people end up doing with this bike, because I think it lends itself incredibly well to customization. I mean, obviously via their campaign, Instruments of Expression, obviously this is meant to be a bike that is customized, and you know, they came out with a bunch of builders that had customized them just to kind of show like, hey, this is what's already possible, you know, if you really put some effort into it. But you know, the aftermarket is going to gobble this up. Like, there's going to be so many options for it, because the Sportster has been like one of the longest running automobile namesakes out there. They said the only other one that they could think of that was like continuously produced was Corvette, but Corvette was actually not in production for like a year, so there was like a gap. Whereas with Sportster, I think they said no gap, which is kind of crazy. That's crazy to think. American motorcycle company, Sportster, longest, you know, namesake or like style model motorcycle in production. Pretty bad. And I've got such a love for like the Sportster name, because you know, that's what I started with, that's what my channel started with. I ended up picking up and buying a used Harley-Davidson Iron 883 2013 back in the day. It absolutely changed my life. It was one of those things that like nudged me and got me to the point that I am today, to be able to do press rides with Harley-Davidson and interview the VP and hang out with the engineers that are responsible. Like, and that's another thing, guys, is the people that created this bike, that made this motorcycle, they're out here riding with us. Like, you know, the VP of design, he's in the back, he's basically like the tail, he's making sure that we're all doing good. The engineers, they're all riding along with us too. So it's pretty awesome that they're out here, and it's not just a company of people that are like trying to design a bike, but that are out of touch. You know, they're definitely taking notes and they're watching, guys. So that's, to me, that's just awesome. One of the other questions that I like to answer during these test ride videos, these review videos, is would I buy the motorcycle? And the answer to that is yes, I would buy the motorcycle. So if I was in the market for, you know, a Harley-Davidson, and I was looking for something more performance-oriented in the Sportster family, with this one, yes, I would totally buy it. And the reason I would buy it is because it looks a little bit more classically styled, you know, like the normal traditional cruiser style motorcycles. It looks like a Sportster. I'm a big fan of that aesthetic. It feels like what a motorcycle should be, I guess, in terms of like, you know, larger front wheels, smaller rear. It's just got like this kind of good stance to it. The fact that you get like this, the awesome performance of the Rev Max with it, pretty great. The fact that you get the added performance of the Rev Max with it, I think it's going to be one of those things that you're going to surprise a lot of people off the line, because they're just, I don't know, they're going to think they're looking at like a normal Harley-Davidson V-twin air-cooled, but man, liquid cooled possibilities in terms of performance, awesome. Anyways, guys, I think that probably about wraps up my test ride and review for the Harley-Davidson Nightster. If you guys do have any questions on it, do me a favor, be sure to post down in the comments below. Let me know what questions you guys have on it, and I'll answer to the best of my knowledge based on the experience that I have had with it on this trip. Big thanks to Harley-Davidson for the opportunity, as always. We really greatly appreciate it. Big thanks to you guys, because without y'all hitting the subscribe button, you know, and hitting the like button and commenting and sharing the videos and all that stuff, like, honestly, like, I would not have the opportunities that I do today. So as I always say, it's incredibly important to practice gratitude, and that is me basically saying thank you guys. I understand that I would not be where I am without y'all, so thank y'all. I really appreciate you. If you did enjoy the video, if it was insightful, if it gave you some knowledge about the bike and you're possibly interested in the Nightster, do me a favor, hit the like button. If you guys aren't subscribed, hit the bell icon as well, so it sends you notifications of future uploads and activity. If you guys are into motorcycle content, you want to continue to be notified of additional content that we upload here on the channel. Until next time, you guys ride safe out there, stay vigilant. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.